Ken, thank you very much for coming up. So, one of the most exciting things that you're involved in, Ken, is this project called the Pamela Project. And I think it's an extremely exciting R&D work. Could you motivate that experiment a little bit for us?
Okay, I mean, the aim is to try and improve treatment for some forms of cancer. And at first sight it seems perhaps a bit odd that you can use accelerators to treat cancer. So we need to understand a little bit about how that happens. And I think the starting point is that something like a third of us will have cancer sometime during our lives. So it's a major health concern. And although there are certain things you can do to reduce the risk of getting cancer, like not smoking, there's a certain level of cancer which is unavoidable. It's just part of being human. It's part of the normal way in which the body works. And therefore we will always need strategies for treating cancer. Now today there are 3 or 4 main modalities. There's surgery, cutting it out. There's chemotherapy, which is very effective, but there's also radiotherapy. And in fact, about 40% of people who are treated successfully for cancer have some form of radiotherapy. So we need always to look at ways of improving radiotherapy, its delivery, so that people are cured but also suffer from fewer side effects. And in order to understand how accelerators and charged particles like protons or carbon ions can do that, we need to understand a little bit about how radiation interacts with matter. So maybe I could just explain on the paper. So if you look at the depth in the body, for conventional X-rays, the energy deposited, that is the damage that it does, follows some profile like this. So it rises to a peak about 3 centimeters below the skin, and then it falls off. Now, of course, if the cancer is here, you do more damage to the cancer than you do to the healthy tissue surrounding it. But if the cancer turns out to be here, then you would actually damage healthy tissue more. Now, of course, you can get around that by having X-ray beams coming from many different directions, so you build up damage to the cancer whilst leaving the damage to healthy tissue at modest levels. If we look on the other hand at how a proton loses energy as it goes through the body, then it has a very different profile, something like that. And what you see immediately is 2 things. If the cancer tumor is here, you already, with just a single direction, do more damage to the cancer than you do to the healthy tissue on the entry path. But also, and equally important, behind the tumor there is no energy deposition at all. So for example, if you have a vital organ here like the heart, you can guarantee that you give it no dose. Now this has been known for about 50 years, but the issue is how to deliver protons at the right energy, in the right place, at the right intensity, so that you can treat cancer with this better form of radiation than with X-rays.
So this is caused by gamma rays. Yes.
This is yes, megavoltage X-rays.
Okay, X-rays, and this is the proton beam. But why does it have this? Why does it peak?
Okay, when the protons are going very fast, effectively it knocks out electrons from atoms at a more or less constant rate, so you get a constant energy loss. But when it slows down towards the end of its range, the probability that it knocks out an electron, and it's the electrons that do the damage, increases dramatically. So you get most of the energy deposition right at the end of the range. If I change the energy of the proton, then what I do is I change the position of this Bragg peak, right? So that I can, if I have a tumor, which it spreads from there to there, by playing with the energy, I can guarantee to give a very heavy dose to the tumor, and I still build up less damage to the healthy tissue than I would with the equivalent X-ray dose. And then, of course, I can play the same game of coming in from several directions so that I lower even more the damage to healthy tissue while still protecting vital organs like the heart, the lungs, the liver.
And are there
so on.
some other ions we can use?
You can, in fact, any iron, but carbon is particularly popular. That has a slightly different profile. So it, relative, if I just normalise to the peak at the top, relative to the peak in protons, you have less damage on the way in. However, there's a small price to pay. Right? You never get anything for free. And the price to pay is that the proton, of course, is a simple object, doesn't fragment. Carbon ion will fragment a little bit on the way, and you get a small dose behind the tumour, a fragmentation dose. And so if I have a vital organ, it will see a little bit of radiation, and that may or may not be important. So there are some tumours, there is some evidence that there are some tumours which turn out to be radiation resistant to both X-rays and protons, but seem not to be resistant to carbon. Paradoxically, protons and X-rays damage tumours in rather a similar fashion, whereas carbon, the mechanism is somewhat different just because of the much higher charge, effectively.
Oh, very good.
So that's the motivation. Also, just another comment, that of course the X-rays are generated using accelerators. The protons are very definitely accelerator physics, and that's of course for me the interest. Can we design accelerators which are better at delivering protons and carbon than the accelerators that are currently used? I mean, there are some 20 or 30 centres worldwide delivering proton and carbon ion therapy, but they use accelerator technology which was first developed, the cyclotrons were developed in the 30s and 40s, synchrotrons were developed in the 50s and 60s, another workhorse of particle physics. But each of them, for cancer therapy, each of them has a limitation which we would like to find ways around, and that's the focus of the Pamela project, is to see if we can design a new type of accelerator, famous non-scaling fixed field alternating gradient accelerator, which is another part of our project to show that technology works, to see if we can adapt that specifically for this application.